The morning sun filtered through the office windows as Emma stood before her boss's desk, trembling as she handed him her wedding invitation. He glanced at it coldly and tossed it back. "Your wedding is next Saturday?" he asked. Emma nodded nervously. "You're fired," he said. "Effective immediately." Welcome to our channel Truth Turn Stories, where real-life truths turn into powerful lessons. If this story speaks to you, subscribe and support the journey. The morning sun filtered through the office windows as Emma stood before her boss's desk, her hands trembling slightly as she held the wedding invitation she'd just placed in front of him. She had worked at Sterling Innovations for 7 years, pouring her heart into every project, staying late countless nights, believing that loyalty and hard work would be honored. Her eyes sparkled with nervous excitement as she waited for Mr. Harrison's response. He picked up the cream-colored card, glanced at it with cold indifference, and tossed it back across the mahogany surface. "Your wedding is next Saturday?" he asked, his voice flat. Emma nodded, her smile wavering. "Yes, sir. I've arranged coverage for all my accounts, and I submitted my time-off request 3 months ago." What happened next shattered her world in an instant. "You're fired," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "Effective immediately." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "What? But why?" Harrison's expression remained unchanged, as if he were discussing the weather rather than destroying someone's livelihood days before the most important moment of her life. "This company needs people who are committed. Marriage, family, all those distractions, they dilute focus. I've seen it 100 times. Women get married, have kids, and suddenly they're unreliable. I'm simply cutting losses before they happen." The words hit her like physical blows. 7 years of dedication, of sacrificed weekends and missed family gatherings, of ideas she'd contributed that had generated millions in revenue, all dismissed in seconds. Emma's mind raced to her fiancé David, to the wedding they'd saved for, to the modest apartment they'd just signed a lease for together. This job was her stability, her contribution to their future. She thought of her team, the clients who trusted her, the projects she'd nurtured like children. "This is illegal," she managed, her voice stronger now despite the tears threatening to fall. Harrison shrugged. "Prove it. I'll say it's performance-related. You'll be too busy with your little wedding to fight me, and by the time you try, you'll have moved on." He pressed the intercom button. "Security, please escort Ms. Chen from the building." The walk through the office was a blur of shocked faces and whispered conversations. Her colleagues watched helplessly as she gathered her personal belongings into a cardboard box. A photo of her and David, a small plant she'd kept alive for 3 years, certificates of achievement that now felt like cruel jokes. Maria from accounting squeezed her hand as she passed, tears in her own eyes. "This isn't right, Emma. Everyone knows you're the heart of this place, but right or wrong didn't matter in that moment." Emma walked out into the bright morning, unemployed and humiliated, clutching a box that contained the remnants of 7 years reduced to objects that fit in her arms. She sat in her car in the parking lot, finally allowing the tears to come, her phone buzzing with concerned texts from coworkers who'd already heard. The wedding was in 6 days. Their savings would barely cover it, and now they had no income cushion, no security. But as Emma dried her eyes and started the engine, something hardened inside her chest. It wasn't bitterness exactly. It was clarity. She had given her best years to someone who saw her as disposable, but she wasn't broken. She was free. David held her that evening, as she told him everything, his jaw clenched with protective anger. "We'll postpone the wedding," he said immediately. "Use that money to get you through until you find something else." But Emma shook her head, a strange calm settling over her. "No, we're getting married exactly as planned. This doesn't get to steal our joy." Her voice was steady, determined. "I've been building other people's dreams for 7 years, David. Maybe it's time I built my own." That week, even as she finalized wedding details and tried on her dress, Emma's mind was already working. She'd spent years watching Harrison make decisions, seeing the gaps in his strategy, noticing opportunities he was too arrogant to pursue. She knew the industry inside and out, knew the clients, understood the market in ways he never bothered to. She'd once suggested an entire new service line that he'd dismissed, only to watch competitors launch the exact concept 6 months later and thrive. The seeds of an idea began to sprout, tentative but persistent. The wedding day arrived like a defiant celebration. Emma walked down the aisle in a simple but elegant gown, her father's arm steady beneath her hand, and when she met David's eyes at the altar, everything else fell away. Harrison had tried to diminish her, to make her feel small and replaceable, but standing there surrounded by people who truly loved her, she felt powerful. The officiant spoke about partnership and building a life together, and Emma felt David squeeze her hand, a silent promise that they were in this together. At the reception, as they danced and laughed and toasted to new beginnings, Emma's former colleague Maria approached nervously. "I probably shouldn't tell you this," she whispered, glancing around. "But 3 more people quit this week. Harrison's already struggling without you. The Meridian account, your account, they're threatening to leave because you're gone." Emma absorbed this information quietly, her mind filing it away. She thanked Maria and returned to celebrating, but the seed that had been planted was growing roots. The Monday after their honeymoon, Emma didn't start job hunting. Instead, she opened her laptop at their tiny kitchen table and began writing a business plan. David watched from the doorway, coffee in hand, a small smile playing at his lips. "You're really doing this?" he asked. Emma looked up, her eyes bright with purpose. "I'm really doing this." She'd been saving separately from their wedding fund, a small nest egg she'd built over the years. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She reached out to former colleagues who'd been unhappy at Sterling Innovations, feeling undervalued and overlooked just as she had been. She contacted clients she'd built relationships with, carefully and ethically, simply letting them know she was starting a consultancy. The response was immediate and overwhelming. People wanted to work with her, not with Harrison's company. They'd stayed because of her, and now they were ready to follow. Within 3 months, Emma had established Chen Solutions from her living room, offering the innovative services Harrison had been too short-sighted to provide. She hired 2 of her former colleagues who'd quit in solidarity, then 2 more. David took over the administrative details in the evenings after his own job, believing in her vision with unwavering faith. The work was grueling, the hours longer than she'd ever worked for Harrison, but it felt different. She was building something with her name on it, something that reflected her values. She treated her employees like humans, not resources. She listened to their ideas. She created flexibility for parents and caregivers, proving that compassion and success weren't mutually exclusive. By month 6, Chen Solutions had outgrown their apartment. They rented a small office space, modest but professional. Emma stood in the empty room, remembering Harrison's cold dismissal, and felt a fierce surge of gratitude. He'd thought he was ending her career. Instead, he'd freed her to become his competition. The first year was a whirlwind of growth and challenges. There were moments of doubt, nights when Emma wondered if she'd been reckless, if security at another company might have been wiser. But each time doubt crept in, another client signed, another talented person joined her team, another industry recognition came through. Chen Solutions was earning a reputation for innovation and integrity, the exact combination Harrison's company lacked. Emma learned that several of Sterling Innovations' largest accounts had quietly shifted their business to her. Tired of Harrison's dismissive attitude and outdated approaches. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very dedication he'd called a liability was building her success, while his arrogance eroded his foundation. She heard through industry connections that Sterling Innovations was struggling, hemorrhaging clients and talent, Harrison's toxic leadership finally catching up with him. Emma felt no pleasure in his difficulties, only a quiet recognition that character eventually reveals itself in results. Then, exactly 1 year after her firing, Emma received a call that changed everything. It was from Harrison's business partner, Richard Sterling, the largely silent investor whose name was on the building, but who'd remained hands-off for years. "Ms. Chen," he said, his voice weary, "I wonder if we might meet. I have a proposition that may interest you." They met at a neutral cafe, and Richard looked older than Emma remembered, burdened by stress. He got straight to the point. "Harrison has run the company into the ground. We're bleeding money, clients are fleeing, and our best people have either joined you or gone elsewhere. The board has voted to remove him and explore options including selling. I wanted to speak with you first." Emma's heart began to race, but she kept her expression neutral. "Why me?" Richard smiled sadly. "Because everyone we've spoken to says the same thing. Sterling Innovations was successful because of you, not despite you. You understood the vision better than Harrison ever did. And frankly, watching what you've built in a year while we've crumbled is all the proof I need." The possibility hung in the air between them, enormous and terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Emma thought of that morning a year ago, the humiliation, the fear, the cardboard box. She thought of every late night she'd invested in a company that saw her as disposable. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked carefully. Richard slid a folder across the table. "We want to sell Sterling Innovations. The board has agreed that you should have the first option to buy. We'll offer favorable terms. You'd acquire all assets, clients, infrastructure. And yes, you'd have full authority to restructure as you see fit." Emma opened the folder, scanning numbers that would have seemed impossible a year ago. But Chen Solutions was profitable and growing, and she had investors who believed in her vision. The company that had thrown her away was now being offered to her like a repentant child seeking forgiveness. Emma took the folder home and spread the papers across the dining table where she'd written her first business plan. David sat beside her, and together they analyzed every detail, every risk, every possibility. "Can we do this?" she asked him, the weight of the decision pressing down. David took her hand, the wedding ring still shining new on her finger. "A year ago, you started a company from our kitchen table days after being fired. You've built something extraordinary from nothing. The question isn't, can you do this? It's, do you want to?" Emma thought about her team, the culture she'd built, the values she refused to compromise. She thought about all the talented people still trapped in toxic workplaces, believing they had no other options. She thought about the clients who deserved better, the industry that needed new models of leadership. "I want to prove something," she said slowly, "not to Harrison. I don't care about revenge. But I want to prove that companies can be successful and humane, that treating people with dignity isn't weakness, that the things he saw as liabilities, compassion, balance, respect, are actually the foundation of sustainable success." The acquisition took 3 months to finalize, months of legal reviews and financial scrutiny and sleepless nights. Emma secured investment from people who believed in her vision, promising them returns built on ethics, not exploitation. The day the papers were signed, Emma became the owner of the company that had fired her on her wedding day. She stood in the lobby of Sterling Innovations, soon to be rebranded as Chen Sterling Solutions, looking at the building she'd once been escorted from in shame. Her team from Chen Solutions would merge with the remaining Sterling employees, bringing fresh energy and a new culture. Emma's first act as owner was to invite every employee to a company-wide meeting. They gathered nervously, uncertain about their futures under new leadership. Emma stood before them, remembering how it felt to be powerless and afraid. "A year ago, I was fired from this company," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I was told that my commitment to my personal life made me a liability, that wanting balance made me unreliable. I was escorted out days before my wedding and told I was disposable." She saw shock and recognition in various faces, some who'd been there, others who'd heard the story. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because I want you to understand the culture we're building together from this moment forward. Your value as employees will never be separated from your value as human beings. Your ideas will be heard. Your lives outside these walls will be respected. Excellence and humanity are not opposites, they're partners. Emma outlined her vision, the changes coming, the opportunities ahead. She announced that Harrison was no longer with the company, and that anyone who wished to continue in this new chapter would be evaluated on their merit and character, not their willingness to sacrifice everything for a paycheck. She saw hope kindle in tired eyes, saw shoulders straighten with renewed dignity. When she finished, the applause started slowly, then built into something that sounded like relief and gratitude, and long-suppressed hope finally given permission to emerge. Over the following months, Emma transformed the company from the inside out. She promoted based on talent and integrity, created flexible policies that honored people's full lives, and implemented the innovative strategies she'd once suggested and Harrison had dismissed. Revenue stabilized, then grew. Client satisfaction soared. Industry awards followed. Chen's Sterling Solutions became known not just for excellent work, but for excellent culture. Proof that success doesn't require sacrificing humanity. One afternoon, nearly 18 months after that devastating firing, Emma sat in her office, the corner office that had once been Harrison's, and reflected on the journey. Her assistant buzzed to say someone was waiting to see her. It was Maria from accounting, the woman who'd squeezed her hand on that awful morning. "I just wanted to thank you," Maria said, her eyes bright with emotion. "I have a daughter now, 6 months old, and because of your policies, I didn't have to choose between being her mother and keeping my career. You changed my life, Emma. You changed all our lives." After Maria left, Emma stood at her window, looking out at the city. She thought about that morning when her world had collapsed, how she'd cried in her car and wondered how she'd survive. She thought about her wedding day, defiant and joyful despite everything. She thought about David's unwavering belief, her team's loyalty, the clients who'd taken a chance on her. She thought about every moment of doubt and every small victory that had built to this impossible reality. The truth settled over her like gentle rain. Being fired had been a gift, though it hadn't felt like one. Harrison had unknowingly freed her from a life of building someone else's vision, liberated her to discover her own strength. His cruelty had revealed his weakness, while her response had revealed her character. She hadn't bought his company for revenge or vindication. She'd bought it because she saw potential being wasted, people being undervalued, and knew she could create something better. Emma picked up her phone and texted David, "Coming home on time tonight. Let's celebrate Ordinary Tuesday," because that's what success really looked like. Not just the corner office or the company ownership, but the ability to honor her work and her life. To be excellent without being consumed. To lead with both strength and kindness. She had proven that the qualities Harrison saw as weaknesses, her commitment to balance, her empathy, her refusal to treat people as disposable, were actually her greatest strengths. As Emma gathered her things to leave, right at 5 o'clock like she'd promised herself she would, she paused at a photo on her desk. It was from her wedding day, she and David laughing in the golden hour light, surrounded by love and possibility. She'd hung this same photo in her Sterling Innovations cubicle years ago, and Harrison had once commented that it was unprofessional to display personal items so prominently. Now it sat in the owner's office, a daily reminder of what truly mattered. The lesson of her journey wasn't about revenge or proving doubters wrong. It was about knowing your worth even when others can't see it, about turning pain into purpose, about building the kind of world you want to live in rather than accepting the one handed to you. Harrison had told her she was a liability. The market had proven she was an asset. But more importantly, she'd proven to herself that her value was never dependent on his recognition. Kindness wasn't weakness. Balance wasn't lack of commitment. Humanity wasn't incompatible with excellence. These weren't obstacles to success. They were the foundation of it. Emma turned off her office light and walked through the building, greeting employees by name, asking about their families, noticing the energy that now filled the halls where tension had once reigned. She'd bought Harrison's company, but more importantly, she'd built something he never could. A business with a soul, a workplace where people thrived instead of merely survived, a legacy of proving that how you succeed matters as much as whether you succeed. As she drove home to David and the life they'd built together, Emma understood the profound truth her journey had revealed. The people who try to diminish you often do so because your light threatens their darkness. Your job isn't to dim yourself to make them comfortable. It's to shine so brightly that you illuminate the path for others still finding their way. And sometimes, just sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that ever could have. Not because the pain wasn't real, but because your response to it revealed who you were always meant to become.